thank you all for coming. Many of you have attended these before, and so you know how this goes. You just kind of ask me questions. I don't have a whole big spiel, but what I will do is I'll go through all these different boards that are up here that we had put up here just to let you know some of this good stuff that's going on. As you know, this is the Taste of Orland weekend, and let's cross our fingers that this rain is gone by like 11 or 12 so that the rest of the night is great, because last night's weather was fantastic. It's actually the 20th anniversary of the Taste of Orland, but it's also the last one we'll be doing in front of the Village Hall. As you know, just from driving around anywhere around that area, parking here for the event, parking here for the event, parking here for the event. So we have all of that. Well, so Centennial Park West, which how many of you have been to a concert out at Centennial Park West? So just about everybody. Centennial Park West was built, was approved in 2003 for a band shell and an outdoor concert venue. And they acquired, they acquired the land, and what they did was they basically built this hill here, and they put a hill right in the middle of the park area, and then they really didn't do anything else. They didn't put any electric. They actually didn't finish the idea. I actually moved into this subdivision in 2005. So I think there's one person in this condo that's lived in that area longer than me, because I was like the second or third house in there. But basically, we've held concerts there since 2011. We have to rent everything. We have to use generators because there's no electricity, which wasn't the best planning in the world. And so we decided that, it's time to actually build the venue out. And so there'll be a stage complete with dressing rooms for the acts, which will help us attract some better acts. Also has loading docks for the stage, and they'll all come in right off of here. So all this so that it's back behind the stage. The other nice thing about this, we designed it around the Taste. So the event that you see right now, you actually see the vendor areas here. We have, I believe, 11 on this side and 9 on this side around the lawn seating. And if you think about the lawn seating at the Taste, that's like this big, like a little itty bitty section of this. And there'll still be seating back here too, because this hill that's here is going to actually move back here. So that this is all a gentle slope, so you can actually, not something flat. So it's actually designed for concerts. There'll be some VIP tent areas, some sponsor areas, and then obviously for the Taste, we could do some more tents back here if we need to. So it's designed for that. All of these vendor pads will actually have pads poured there. They won't be sitting on the grass. They'll also have electric run to it, so they'll be able to plug in. They don't need to have generators or plug into the street lights or any of that kind of stuff. There'll be lighting, all of that. There'll be a fence all the way around it already, so we don't have to go out and rent fences. Those fences will roll back during non-concert time so that the area, people can still walk through the park. This area will obviously be secured because it's the stage. So this is just a poured concrete area. It's not necessarily seats. It could be left open for dance floors. It could be a lot of things that, So anyhow, so that's what we're doing there. That has broken ground. So they've been moving dirt. So there's a construction fence around it, and they've been moving dirt for a couple of weeks. So it's supposed to be, this part will be sodded by the fall. So we'll just have, they'll be working on the stage after that. So that's one project that's coming early next year. So the Taste will move there next year. All the concerts will go there. Market on the Park will move there. The nice thing about that is you have this Metro parking lot here, and the one on the other side of the tracks, which is connected by an underpass. It's almost 3,000 parking spots between them. A little less, but when you factor in the rest of the park as well. So, also our July 4th, which is now on the other side of Centennial Park, where we rent a stage and all that. We'll move the staging over here. The fireworks will still shoot from the same area. You're about the same distance away. You're just across the tracks. So people could still enjoy it over the other side if they want as well. But now we don't put a bunch of people on our ball fields, and we keep our ball fields in better shape. So we will use this venue a lot. Is that going to be completed next year? Yeah, it's supposed to be done by April or May. So our first concerts should be there next year. That's the plan.
Will there be permanent bathroom facilities or?
Yeah, there's bathroom facilities, and we'll also get porta potties. So there's bathroom facilities here, and then there'll be porta potties as required depending on the event. So we'll have all that. So that's one thing that's going on. Another big park project we've got going on is Schuessler Park, and so this is Schuessler Park. And we're renaming this portion the Michael Schofield Sports Complex. So that's this portion here. And so Schuessler Park is, so back in the early 60s, the park was, early to mid 60s, the park was built by volunteers. The land was donated. It was the first time they had a developer donate land for a park. Of course, the developer donated the worst land to build on. So the rest of Fairway got built. This area kind of flood prone. Anyone who's been over there knows that area gets pretty wet. But the community actually built the ball fields. And when I was growing up, it was that and the one over by the library were the only full-size baseball fields. It was the nicest baseball field we had back then, for bigger kids. But it's become pretty unusable because of the water issues, and just it's pretty run down. Actually, there was a study done across the entire community, and about 60% of the people named this the #1 park to get revamped. So, there's the project. Both these projects are a little over $10 million. This one, about half of that project is stormwater related. What they're doing, they just got, even though this technically broke ground sooner and was approved sooner, we've been waiting for Army Corps permits. We finally got those, so they're going to start dredging the pond this week. So they're dredging the pond, making it deeper, making it wider so it holds more water. How you doing today? Good. And then also, there's going to be turf fields here, and benefits of the turf fields are twofold. One is you can actually store water under the turf field, so it's actually going to solve some of our water storage problem, because you can, in times of heavy rains, you can actually hold water underneath the fields. So that will happen. The other thing is that because it's turf, it can be used regardless of the condition, and it's going to be the primary area for the football program, which has been around since '74 and has never had a field. They put them behind the libraries where I played, and then in the '90s they moved them to Humphrey, which are baseball fields. And anyone who knows anything about fields and taking care of them, one season of football practice on a baseball field, you've destroyed it. The nice thing about the turf is you're not going to destroy it. And so they can, any kind of weather, whatever. And they play on turf. They play at Sandburg. It is set with some bleachers and a little press box area in case they ever need to use it for games. But by and large, it's a practice facility, and parking is being added. It's already the third most parking we have in any park behind Centennial and Humphrey. It'll now be second, because you'll have all this parking here as well that they're adding. Instead of street parking, they're building parking here. And you already have parking here and over here. So this future area here, the Michael Schofield III Sports Complex, and does anybody know who Michael Schofield is? Everybody? Okay. So, and obviously his dad is also the fire chief over at the fire district, but he played with Pioneers. He played with Sandburg, and obviously won a Super Bowl with the Broncos and played with the Bears last year. So that's going to be here, along with some signage, some cool ideas that have been kicked around. Is pictures of him as life-size pictures of him as a Pioneer, him as at Sandburg, him as the Bears, so these kids can see how he progressed and get excited. Also, there's going to be things with his wife, Kendall Coyne, who was the captain of the U.S. women's hockey team, and she's also a gold medalist, Olympic gold medalist with the U.S. women's hockey team. So, and they're also helping us raise money for this, which is going to be an all-access playground, all abilities playground. So basically for kids with disabilities and that kind of stuff. So it has extra safety features and those types of things. We have a couple of those in town, but this one will be here as well. So that's what we're doing there. That also will open next year. So by next fall, the Pioneers will be practicing there. So The other benefit of having those fields is soccer, lacrosse, any other field sport can play there the rest of the year because they can be used all year. So they're going to be very nice fields. And because we have those extra couple of fields, it allows us to maybe rotate 1 or 2 soccer fields out of the rotation for a season to restore those fields because they're all being used all the time. And if we can get 1 or 2 out, then you can at least spend a season fixing them. And so you can kind of rotate and fix them and keep them in better shape. So that's that. This is just a mock-up of the potential of the scoreboard that they're going to build. Then this. So I know that you pointed out that you watched the meeting a couple weeks ago, which was about the move of this Veteran Center to right down the street, actually. So it's going to be right down there. Where the currently the recreation maintenance department sits. They're going to move into the recreation building, so it's going to create an opening there. And the reason for this, a couple things. Anyone know what this building used to be? I know you do, Gail, so over your hand. What's that? Police station. It was the first police station not in the in my lifetime. It used to be in the old Village Hall on Beacon, and then it moved here. Then it moved over to Ravinia which is now the rec building, and then it moved to its location that it is currently. So that's what this was. And I think in mid-2000s, this was dedicated to the veterans. So the American Legion gets to use it, the VFW gets to use it. At the end of the day, it's still a village building. And I pointed out, I pointed this out to Ron's predecessor, and I think to Ron as well back in 2018. That it was pretty clear this building was reaching the end of its useful life. Pretty expensive to maintain it, pretty expensive to fix it. We did a complete facility study a couple years later. The costs on this building from between now and 2030 are about, it's $398,000 estimated to keep it functional. That's pretty expensive. So staff, because we're trying to figure out ways to, get rid of buildings we don't need or that are beyond their useful life, staff said, well, the Legion and the VFW, we can give them meeting space like we do for other places. That's their job. That's, I'm not throwing any stones at them for saying that to us. But I said that doesn't work because they need to have a place for their meetings. Joel, who's our Public Works Director, is also a retired Navy, and he, within 5 minutes, said, hey, we have this rec maintenance building. We're emptying that out. He goes, it's a house. We can reconfigure the offices and make it a big space. He says that it's got a new deck, new roof, so it's good for 20 plus years. The other thing is we're building a storage garage there because the park's maintenance storage garage is literally falling in, so that's being built next year. And I said, well, that's one of the key needs of the VFW and the Legion is storage. And we have the storage building over here, which also is in need of repair. So he basically came up with a plan. And so this plan, it kind of guts the interior and makes it more into a meeting room. So to put this in perspective, this area, so that's the big meeting room over there. That meeting room is about 100 square feet bigger than what's over there. If you add this space in, it's about 350 square feet bigger. It also has a full kitchen, which I know as both a Legion and a VFW member, that little place with a refrigerator is not, we do a lot of this kind of stuff. It sure would be nice to have a kitchen to have that capability. Well, we have that. So you have that. The other thing is you have a deck. And we were driving by it yesterday, and my wife pointed out, man, that's a nice little area. And right now, if we do picnics, there's no place to do it. Now, over there, you got the woods, it's beautiful. And it's always going to stay maintained because you still have the storage garage there. We're also building a storage facility. We're building another little garage while we're building it that for the VFW and the Legion, splitting it in half. We're going to put another overhead door in here as well, so we can get things in and out like the smokers and grills and things like that. So at the end of the day, it's about triple the storage that we currently have here, which is a big need. It's got a big meeting space, slightly bigger than what we got there. It's got a full kitchen. It's got a deck. From my perspective, as a member of both organizations, I actually think it's a way better space. I think the the people upset about this space just are, they don't like change. I mean, and I get it. People don't like change. But if you look at it from just this is a better space. And it's going to be less than $100,000 to do all this versus, almost $400,000. So when I look at the long term, it's kind of a no-brainer decision. It really is. And we will move, as part of this, we'll move everything as well. So, and anything that doesn't fit or can't get on the walls or whatever, the museum will take ownership of, and we'll keep in our storage for a museum, and then we'll rotate those museum pieces. For those of you who don't know, the museum closed in April, which was the old Village Hall. Largely, hardly anyone, I think it had 1,000 visitors, and I think of those 1,000 visitors, 70 of them were unique visitors, so it's the same 50, 60 people coming all the time, and nobody else is going there. And that, believe me, that's not much bigger than this space that we have in this building. It's just not very big. Again, a building that's almost $1 million to repair and keep, and we're like, this is not a good use of money. So what we've done with the museum pieces is we've created, if you've been in the Village Hall, display cases with a rotating exhibit of our museum pieces at the Village Hall. Lots of people see that because they come in the Village Hall, and I see people all the time walking through and looking at those. There's also a rotating exhibit at the library. We've worked with the library to get a permanent place in the library for rotating historical pieces. The village now owns the John Humphrey House, which is a historic landmark, which the Orland Historical Society kind of fell into disrepair. And the one thing John Humphrey did in his will, he said, if this ever happens and the Historical Society can't maintain this, then ownership transfers to the village. So the ownership transferred to us. We are spending a fair amount of money to restore that, but again, it is a National Historic Landmark, so I think it's about $400,000 to fix that so that the foundation is in decent shape. But once that opens up to the public, which it will, we'll have pieces in there, and then Stellwagen Farm is also that house is also being restored as part of the agreement from getting it from the Stellwagen family. And there's other buildings out there as well, so we will put some pieces out there as well. So, we'll have museum artifacts rotated in these various places where people can actually see them, because the reality is no one was coming just to a museum, and I know there are people who said, well, people will come to Orland Park for the Orland Park Museum. Let's be real. No one's coming to Orland Park to see Orland Park's museum, right? But I want to see our artifacts. I mean, there's a couple people in this room that may have lived here longer, like Gail has lived here longer than me, but I've been here pretty much since 1966, other than the college and military years. So, and I have a lot of history here. So I care about the history, want the history to be maintained, but I think we have to be wise about how expensive it is to maintain it and where will people actually see it and see the history. And I think, the reality is no one's coming to Orland Park to go see just the Stellwagen Farm. No one's coming here just to see the museum. No one's probably coming here just to see John Humphrey House. Maybe they'll stop by at some point, because it is a historic house. It's pretty cool. But it's not something that's going to be a regular place that people go to visit. So, but having these things in all these different locations is helpful. So that's kind of the stuff that's going on right now. The police just released last year's report. The numbers are no different than what that I gave at the State of the Village. Last 5 years are the lowest number of index crimes we've had in any 5 years in the 28 we've been tracking them. They're up a little bit over the previous two, but the previous two were COVID-related years. So they are lower than the two that were prior to COVID. So still the lowest violent crime rate for towns over 50,000 in the state of Illinois. And half of those violent crimes are against our police officers, resisting arrest, that type of stuff. And I think the number is 18 or 19, which when you think about having 60,000 people and millions of visitors, that's really, really low, and especially when I think 14 or 15 of them are basically domestic battery, half of those being against police. So relatively speaking, very, very, very low violent crime. Now that's not to say we're not busy, or we're not as busy, or we're not busier than we used to be 30 years ago. Times have changed, and we do things differently, right? To keep us safe, so that anyone go to the Taste last night besides me and Tom? Well, you'll see there's a fence all the way around it, right? There's a fence all the way around it, but it's a sign of the times, and for the small, relatively small cost of putting a fence and having an entrance where people have to go through. And we have a detector through there, and it's actually pretty cool the way this thing works. That you just walk through it, and it's cut down so much on us having to look through bags because it identifies which bags we have to look at, and the way this technology works. So right now we're renting it. We're probably looking to purchase 4 of these for all of our events because it works really well. And our goal is to keep everyone safe. And we can't turn a blind eye to everything that's going on around us. Obviously I've been under attack about how we're not really safe because we have these things in place. Well, Gail, when you were younger, when I was younger, when I was a kid, did we lock our doors in Orland Park? I didn't lock my doors. Does anyone leave their house without locking their doors anymore? No.
Never.
No. Times have changed, right?
50 years.
And yes, the one thing that is up is stolen cars is up a little bit. It's like from when I first got here, 20 to like 30-ish. All but 2 of those last year, people left their keys in their car. Well, your key, and then they just is in your car, and they just go in and push the button and they drive off. Like it's very preventable, right? So these are things that we do differently today because it's not the same as 40 years ago. And the same thing with computers and protecting your accounts and et cetera. I mean, there's just a lot of things that we do because times have changed and criminals get smarter and they try and do more things. So that's what we do. We do everything we can to keep you safe, and we've been very effective at doing it.
Carjackings in Orland, is there any kind of a time pattern?
No. So we have an individual that did a television commercial during my campaign who lives in Orland Park who said we have 5 carjackings a month. I want you to put that in perspective. 5 carjackings a month would be 60 a year, which is 1 per every 1,000, which means in my tenure in 6 years, we would have 1 in 150 people have been carjacked in Orland Park. Do you really believe that number? No. So since I've been here, we've had either 5 or 6, so like 1 per year.
But at a certain time of day, does that mean?
The 1 per year, you can't draw any conclusion for one event per year. There's no carjacking issue, as you may have heard. That's someone trying to make Orland Park look bad. Like I said, 1 per year. I mean, do we want 1? No. But is there anything we can do I think one was in a neighborhood at 4 in the afternoon. Another one was at a gas station at 8 in the morning. Another one was at 3 a.m. at an empty Jewel parking lot. I mean, so there's no rhyme or reason. It's an opportunity where somebody wants to go somewhere and they have an opportunity to do it. But like I said, 1 per year since I've been here.
What's the questions now?
Questions anytime.
Yeah. What's happening to Riviera?
Well, Riviera is a private business.
I know it's a
So-
private business, but
Well, yeah, so
they've been working on it for a long time.
yeah, so obviously the restaurant opened, the banquet facility opened. It was purchased, and they reopened the restaurant. They reopened the banquet facility. They've been working on the health club, as far as I know. They had a lot of things they had to do for the health department to reopen the pool. I don't know what their plans are regarding that. I know they're working on it. I don't know what their plans are regarding it. I don't know if they're planning on finding an operator to run it. I don't know if they're planning on running it themselves. I don't know.
What's going on with the cultural center?
With the cultural center. The cultural center is going to be torn down next year. This is the last year of the cultural center. It was $6.2 million to repair that building.
Where are they going?
So the various programs that are there are going to be in different buildings in the village, but Civic Center, the Franklin Labey Center. So basically the village center, the village hall, the Labey Center, the Civic Center, and the recreation building, that will kind of be the recreation campus, if you will. That's where most of the indoor recreation programs, of course, the Sportsplex and the Orland Health and Fitness too, but that's where a lot of those programs will move to because it's really a very underutilized building. And we offered it up to the schools because they were looking for space for early childhood education. And it's costing them a lot more than that to expand their schools. But they declined, which is fine. And we're demolishing that, and then we're going to then next year we're planning on redoing Dugan Park, which won't be nearly as expensive. It's probably a tenth of much as expensive as Schuessler Park is. We're going to redo Dugan Park, and I think there's going to be public meetings on it. I think there may have already been one. There'll be a survey on it. I think that one of the entering arguments right now is maybe adding some pickleball courts there, since that's so popular.
Is Pete's Fresh Produce still coming?
Pete's Fresh Market is still coming. They're working, they're constructing, everything's under construction.
Going back to Centennial Park West, bathrooms were, addressed, but you said that the stage area would be secured and the only permanent bathrooms are in that secured area and the rest will be porta potties. If I would want to bring my mother to a concert, she uses a walker, so a porta potty is really out of the question.
No, so what I said is the stage area is secured from the public when we're not having concerts.
Right,
So-
if I bring my mother to a concert and she would need a porta potty, that's just not gonna happen with her using a walker.
Again, these porta potties are here permanently, okay?
Right, but is that accessible to the public during a concert?
As I just said, the stage is not going to be accessible to the public when we don't have a concert,
Right,
okay? Because obviously we don't want vandalism.
Right.
During the concert, the stage, this entire thing is open, and we'll have things. But porta potties also, there are ADA accessible porta potties that are put out for every event as well. So we always have ADA. And oh, by the way, those permanent bathrooms that are there were an add-on to accommodate the temporary relocation of the Pioneers. So that has not had bathrooms for the bulk of since 2003 when it was purchased. I think the bathrooms went in 2021. So this is not an area with bathrooms generally. But for the concerts, there'll be. I mean, we've never had a porta potty problem at the or a bathroom problem at the concerts that I'm aware of.
Sunset Ridge Drive is getting to be a speedway there. I called several times from 151st down to 154th. They're not doing anything about it.
Well, I would say that's a mischaracterization to say we're not doing anything about it. We have. Hold on. You asked a question. I'll answer it. Okay. So we have police patrols everywhere. We do speed. We do speed cameras. We do speed patrols. We do all of that. We have 11. We have anywhere from 8 to 11 officers on at any one time to cover 22 square miles. So we can't be everywhere all the time. What I will tell you is both your neighborhood and every neighborhood, there have been, every time we get these complaints, we will put up cameras, we'll track speed, we'll do all of that. Here's what we find. On pretty much every time, the average speed's around 25 miles an hour, give or take. You shake your head, I'm just telling you that's what we track the data. 95th percentile, so 95% of the people are usually under 28 miles an hour. That's what we see in every single place we do this. And then when we run extra patrols, all of the tickets are people that live in the neighborhood. So it's not other people, it's people who live in your own neighborhood that are causing the issues. So we track all that. We have a process for doing all this. People want speed bumps. Well, if you want speed bumps, you're not going to get snow plowing. It's that simple. So, oh, by the way, you're also not going to get nearly as fast of a response from the fire district because the fire district does not want any speed bumps whatsoever. Nor do we from an emergency procedure perspective, but you won't get snow plowed. Okay, so speed bumps are not an option. People want stop signs some of them want them in the middle of a block. If you put a stop sign in the middle of a block, I guarantee you will get kids killed. Because the only people that will know about that stop sign are the local kids in the local neighborhood, and they'll expect people to stop. No one here expects a stop sign in the middle of a street, right? So we have a process for putting stop signs in. We review all of the most recent request, including a threat for a lawsuit. We did a speed study, 10-day speed study on the street. The average speed in that neighborhood, by the way, we've been threatened to be sued. 17 miles an hour was the average speed. The 95th percentile speed was 24 miles an hour. Over 10 days, the highest 1 hour of traffic was 130 cars. So they averaged 13 cars in 1 hour, the busiest hour of the day, over 10 days. 13 cars. You think about that. That's like one every 5 or 6 minutes. That does not warrant a stop sign, right? And it was all generated because one person got in an accident at a corner because they weren't paying attention, right? So we just can't. We can't be everywhere all the time. We have someone on the beat. They go through in fact, every single beat, every single street is covered, every single shift. That's what our guys do. So we can't be everywhere all the time. We do what we can. We do what we can do. But and we're Nabia, can you make sure we'll do another speed study out on Sunset Ridge? But I'm very familiar with the street.
I appreciate it.
So we'll do another speed study out there, but I can tell you, because I've seen 20 of these, that the numbers I gave you, that's exactly what we're gonna see. And there are gonna be that, there's gonna be that 2 or 3 cars. I mean, the high speed, there's usually one car that does 50 miles an hour. Problem is, to catch that one person, you gotta be sitting there that one time. And guess what? When our police officer's sitting there that one time, he ain't driving 50. But we can't sit there for 10 days to stop one car from coming through, unfortunately. So, it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And the other thing you should know, the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, everyone should know here, it is set artificially low on purpose, okay? Because anyone who's got a newer car knows how hard it is to keep your car from going faster than 20 miles an hour. You put any gas on it at all, it's going 20 miles an hour. It practically idles that fast. So we know that. So generally, we don't write tickets unless they're 30 or above. It generally is the rule of thumb.
Doing 50.
Well, like I said, I'm betting. Here's what we'll see from Sunset Ridge. We'll see exactly the same numbers I told you, and we'll see 2 or 3 cars over a period of 10 days that do 40 miles an hour plus. But 3 cars over 10 days, it's just not.
And they can't put that special camera out there. They said they got so many and they don't have any.
Well, so all those little special speed cameras, those are expensive, and we have to pay. And we have to pay electricity and everything else. And again, for that one car, and that camera's not going to stop them from doing it, because there's no enforcement that we can do on it. So it's not going to. Our police officers have to see it.
The road, Orland Brook at 159th Street is really bad. So if you're trying to come from the west and you're on 159th Street and you're heading east and you want to make a left-hand turn, the traffic is kind of crazy
It's a
there.
state road.
So you have to go quickly, but the minute you hit Orland Brook, there's this big dip and you have to put the brakes on or kill your shocks.
Okay, so it's a state road, so we don't control.
About Orland Brook.
You're talking about coming from 159th to Orland Brook, and you're talking about the problems of going from 159th to Orland Brook. So 159th to Orland Brook, okay, that's a state road, okay. So as far as any traffic controls or anything like that, there's little we can do. We have done since 2019. So prior to 2019, basically our road, and I don't have the video monitored so I could pull it up, but 40% of our roads were in poor condition. We've gotten those down to 17% based on their current condition. This year we just added another 5 roads to that. I don't know where Orland Brook sits in all of that, but your issue is more people turning very quickly on Orland Brook. My suggestion would be is to go down to the light and and go around the other way, because there's not going to be another light, so there's a much safer way to do it. That's a decision you have to make. If it's that important for you to go that and save a minute and a half, then that unfortunately that's going to be the issue, because to get across that street you have to go across it very fast, and the side streets are not built to handle the speed of what 159th is or 159th crossing, and there won't be another traffic signal put in there. We do not want to be. First off, we don't want a traffic signal every block, and secondly, there's no way the state would allow that.
One is being done on 151st, off Harlem Avenue. There's a lot of construction going on right now. Nobody knows what's happening.
Well, if no one knows what's happening, then no one is looking at the village stuff, because we've been saying it for a long time. That is a water main project that I've been talking about since I became mayor in 2017. So it's a water main project that's coming across from Oak Lawn, going down there, and then it's going down south, down Wheeler Avenue to our, to Liberty. I think it's gonna be done in the next couple of years. So basically right now we have a water project. Right now, we only have a single pipe coming out that feeds all our water, okay? If you were gonna build a new system today, you build a water system on a loop so that if there's a break, you can run the water the other way, okay? So you can pump it either way. This is an older system, it wasn't built that way, so it's a single line. So if you get a break in that line, water stops flowing. We've had some breaks. Fortunately, none of those breaks have been in inaccessible areas like under the CalSag. If we had a break under the CalSag, I'm not exaggerating, people will die. We're probably without water for potentially 4 to 5 days. We don't have enough water for that. We have more than most other towns that are on the system. In fact, every other town that's on the system. We still don't have enough water. So we're gonna, people, obviously we'll find ways to get a lot of people water, but there will be people that will fall through the cracks because that's what happens, okay? So back in early 2000s, the towns started negotiating getting a new water line from Oak Lawn. That was approved a couple years before I became mayor. It's a $300 million project. Talked about it's probably going to impact everyone's water bill by about $15 a month. It's probably starting this year or next. That $15 a month, $15 a month you're going to see worth of water bill, and it's all for our portion. Our portion of this project is 26% because that's how much water we get, and also because this second line basically gives us water redundancy. It gives us a second line, so if the first line has a break, the second line can still provide the water. So there's 2 lines, so it provides water redundancy. It was a no-brainer project, but it's very expensive. Also, we have to pay solely for the line that goes to the main line from our main pump station because that only serves us. So we have to pay for all that. But if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have water redundancy because we wouldn't tap into the line. So it's kind of we have to do that. So that project's been going on. It's been under construction since 2016, I think. It's going to go through, I think, 2024, 2025, or 2025. But our portion of it, I think, finishes next year. That's why Wheeler Avenue has never been redone, and we just did a 1-inch overlay on the pavement because Wheeler was supposed to be done a few years ago, but we know that Wheeler's going to get torn up as part of this project and rebuilt. Didn't make sense to do it twice. So, that water project is going on. So that's what you saw going across 143rd last year. This year it's going across 151st, and it's going to come down Wheeler. And basically, it's a 60-inch water pipe providing water redundancy for us and the entire region. But that's what it is, and that's been. Hey, Nabia.
Yes.
So we've put that in the village newsletter, every newsletter, and the senior newsletter since 2018 that I know of. So every single newsletter's been there. So we try to communicate. We try everything we can to get you the information that we can, but can't. I only know so many ways to get it to you. I know we've done that. I know we do it on social media. I know I talk about the state of the village. I know this has come up at every coffee that I've had. So
There's also a dedicated webpage that has all the information.
yeah. So
I'm curious, on 151st, the cornfield by the shopping area, who owns that and what's going on with that?
51st and Cornfield.
94th Avenue, right?
The cornfield.
94th Avenue.
That's owned by, I don't know who owns it, and I don't know what.
District 135.
No, District 135 does not own it. That much I do know. I don't know, but it's a 70-some acre parcel. So private ownership of land, no one's required to build anything, so, I don't know. I don't know what deals they're working until they submit something to us.
In Centennial Park, by the baseball, where the track is in Centennial Park, do you know where I'm talking about, the track around the baseball fields?
Well,
it's in disarray. It floods over there and it is broken up on the south side, on the north side.
So you're talking about over by by Lake Sedgwick, over by the ice skating rinks. Yeah, we're aware.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're aware of it. It's in our long-term plans to fix and work on. Centennial Park being such a huge park, we can't redo the whole park at one time, so it's part of all of the different phasing. And it starts with this, because this allows us to move the football program out of Centennial Park and off of those fields, which opens up the baseball fields and the soccer fields so that other baseball fields and soccer fields can be closed and not used while there's construction going on. So it's all part of a process. But I'm very familiar with it because I walk my dog through there all the time.
And speaking of the dogs, the dog parks are horrible. It's making me sad. The little dog park is in such disarray. The weeds are growing up past my ankles, and my little fur baby gets lost in there.
So we'll look at the dog park. That's a combination of us and Orland Township. It's a partnership there. So we'll take a look at it.
I like it a lot. And then one more, my apologies. A little further south, behind Centennial Drive, there's an open area that shows Lake Sedgwick beautifully back there. I don't know who's responsible for maintaining that area, but there's a gravel walkway back
That's
there.
the homeowners association.
Our homeowner association is
Or-
not doing that over there because the village cuts the grass back there.
So there's also private land back there as well. We don't own all the land around, so I know where you're talking about, but there's a house and there's a whole acreage there that we don't own.
So you guys didn't put those really nice benches back there?
I don't know. But that back part of Lake Sedgwick is not, the good portion of that, most of that is not owned by the village. It's owned by another property owner. They want us to pay $5 million for a property that has no value. So we said we're happy to take a donation, but we're not going to do that. So if in fact they ever donate, we'll complete the path all the way around the lake. But
Oh, that would be.
we don't own it. So
Okay, you know
yeah.
that's your path.
yeah, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But as far as those paths go, it's part of the long-term plan as far as when we do those paths. So, and I don't have Public Works here to know exactly what year everything is, but that's.
Is it part of that $11 million plan though? Is it?
No, this is Schuessler Park. This is Schuessler Park, which is at 88th Avenue and Poplar at Schuessler Park over at 143rd. This Centennial Park West, that does not have anything to do with the rest of the park. That's just the Centennial Park West. But the thing that Schuessler Park does is once we move the football program, that opens up fields for soccer and baseball to move, which allows us to move them off of other fields, which allows us to do construction elsewhere. But the reality is we have 106 million of projects that were unfunded. We had another 150 million in projects in the next 5 years that are funded. There's a lot of projects, and so we can't do everything at once. So we have to prioritize all those things. But the lake at Lake Sedgwick and raising that up and fixing that problem that's too low is on the list. But and the other thing that's probably not going to get done until the ice skating rink moves. So the ice skating rink, if things move forward as they are, 143rd and LaGrange, the project that we're evaluating right now to go into 143rd and LaGrange will include moving the current Crescent Park into a different location on that site. And on that site, there will be an ice skating rink in that area so that it's activated in the winter. And when that ice skating rink goes in, the ice skating rink over at Centennial Park will go away. That ice skating rink is very, very, very expensive to maintain. And then when that gets redone, that whole little area is going to get redone at once as opposed to piecemealing.
I have a question on the Sportsplex. It's a great facility, but there are often challenges with people that come and use the facility, and police have been called over sporadic times. And I've observed the behavior of some people that want to come for the day. And I know the people behind the desk, some of them are very young, and the people are just really kind of abusive, and I know you can't change that person's behavior. But someone at the front desk who's older, has been there a long time, said, I'm almost sometimes afraid to come to work.
Well, so someone at the front desk who's saying that they're afraid to come to work, if they're not talking to their boss, then they shouldn't be talking to you. And two, they should bring that issue to their boss, which I can promise you if they have, we have addressed it. We have cameras over there. We have management is over there in those offices and in those buildings. Again, we can't control someone coming in with bad behavior. I couldn't control if someone came in here and started acting foolish. There's nothing that I could do about that, right? When that happens, we respond. We have in fact, the board has approved the policy that was proposed by staff. We didn't approve exactly what they proposed. We actually went back to them and said this is not appropriate and we need to modify it. But it includes up to a lifetime ban from the facility. What we told the policy that came to us actually was a mandatory lifetime ban including for kids under 18 for certain infractions. So two 12-year-olds get in a fist fight, they're lifetime banned from the sportsplex. I'm like, I'm sorry, but 12-year-olds do dumb things, and I don't think we should be lifetime banning them from the sportsplex for that. However, what the policy reads now is you're banned permanently from the sportsplex, but after 1 year you can apply for reinstatement. So that was some of the changes we made to the policy. And it's it depends on the infraction. It could be 30 days, it could be 60 days, it could be 90 days. And it doesn't just include the sportsplex, it includes all, it can include all village programs. We have a whole process for that. Every employee there knows we have that process. Every employee there knows that if they receive any abuse, they're to report it, so that we call police if we need to. Well, we'll call management first, call police if we need to. There is no reluctance from our police to respond to any issue that's over there, no reluctance from our management team to handle anything. So if an employee is saying that, an employee is griping to gripe to try and spread things throughout the village because for whatever reason they don't like whatever's going on, no employee should be saying that, because there's too many policies in place to protect our employees over there, whether it's our management team, whether it's our police, and we respond immediately to these things. So if they're telling you that, they're feeding you a line of garbage.
Well, and I can understand if there's some younger kids behind the counter, they're still learning and maybe they haven't gotten the right training either.
Well, I understand, but you told me that was an older person that was saying that to you.
Well, there's multiple people.
Yeah, but again, all of those, everyone that's there has been trained, they've been taught, they've been told, if there's an issue, you need to bring it to your supervisor, and that's their job. And even if they're young, they need to bring it to their supervisor. So, and our supervisors are there as well. And again, we have cameras there also, and I use the sportsplex too. So, and I've never seen any incidents over there. I'm not there 24/7. I've never seen any issues over there. So we have had issues. We know there's been issues. We've had people ejected. We've had fights. We've had police called. We've had arrests over there. We've modified our policies accordingly to try and we don't live in the same times we used to live, so we have to do some things that are different to stop this stuff. So we do some of that stuff, and I think by and large, but we have to strike a balance too, because we do want families to be able to use it. So that's a balance we have to strike. But any employee that's having an issue, if they're not bringing it to their management or to the police, then they're not doing their jobs, and they have been trained to do that. So that kind of frustrates me, because I know how much time we spend trying to make sure everything is good over there. And again, I've been there a lot, and I've never seen any issues. So while I've been there. So
I work at the cultural center, and I know where you're going to be moving all of those people, there is not enough parking space. There is no way you're going to get people to park there.
So we have like 50 parking spaces, or maybe 60 parking spaces at the cultural center, and we have almost 250 or 300 at the cultural center, or at the not at the cultural center, at the civic center, and we have another 100. We have more parking at the Labey Center than we have at the culture. Okay, so we have more parking at the Labey Center than we have at the cultural center. We have more parking at the civic center than we have at the Labey Center. We have more parking at the Village Hall than we have at the civic center. All of those parking lots are bigger than and we're spreading the people from the cultural center to all of those buildings. So
We were told that you were only gonna take them to one place.
even if we took them to one place, all those parking lots are bigger.
The old police station, but
The old police station is where that's where our rec offices are. The Labey Center is the gym. The Civic Center is the Civic Center next to the Village Hall. Those are the places that those are going to go. So, every one of those parking lots, even the old recreation building, is bigger than the Civic Center. Every one of those parking lots. So.
This is just an inquiry, I am not familiar, and it was brought to my attention by just someone who expressed, so I don't know if it's correct. Did the mall introduce shot spotters?
Introduce what?
Did the mall introduce shot spotters? Or are those towers just like with the blue lights on?
Shot spotters. I'm not, I'm not going to discuss any of our security measures that are in place. I will tell you that the mall and the village work closely on all of our security, on the security that we use. We have access to all of the mall's security cameras and security apparatus 24/7 if we need it, which, believe it or not, does anybody remember when the priest ran over the person and killed the person? It was actually the mall's. I know that we had someone that attacked me and the village saying that we didn't keep us, and they basically said the mall was responsible for this. It actually came out of Square Celt. It had nothing to do with the mall, but it was actually the mall's cameras. They're so good, we were able to catch it from the mall's cameras 400 feet away to clear that case. So we have access to that 24/7, and the mall remains, as anyone who's been to the State of the Village knows, since I've been mayor, before I was mayor, the mall's the safest mall in the Chicagoland region, and still is. So we have data that, we have a place that tracks all that information, and still very safe mall. So.
Just in terms of trend, is our village growing still with new people moving in, or are we?
Yeah, we grew. So we grew in the last census. I think we grew like 1.5 or 2%. So we're still growing, way slower than we did, obviously, in the '80s. But when you consider that Cook County is a net decrease, obviously having an increase in Orland Park is a good thing. So we're growing. I can tell you from an economic standpoint, based on this year, sales tax numbers are up. I mean, everything is up. We're doing very well. We'd recently put out a release because the state reports this stuff quarterly on the various towns, and we're right behind Schaumburg and Naperville as far as retail sales in the suburbs. We used to be just about on par with Oak Brook, I think, if you look historically, and we're way surpassed them now. So we're doing extremely well. And most towns have seen a bit of a bump. Not all. There have been a few that have been, flat. Burr Ridge has been flat. Tinley Park's a little flatter, but up a little. But if you think about it, everyone goes, "Oh, Burr Ridge," but there's really not much retail there. There's one little center. That's really it. They don't have much. So when you look at stuff like that, but Oak Brook's a big retail area, and we've, done a lot. And that's all retail. That's apparel. That's food. That's auto. And obviously, auto is a big part. So it's not just sales at a clothing store. It's also auto. It's the fact that we have we have a variety. So when one sector's up, the other sector's down, and that kind of.
Speaking of autos, it came to my attention, and again, I don't know the credibility of this. Does the Orland Park, does the Village of Orland Park introduce, or have they introduced a special tax on auto sales?
We don't even have the legal ability to do that. Titled goods, so home rule sales tax, which we're home rule because we're greater than 25,000 people, which, oh, by the way, I also heard someone's trying to get rid of home rule. You are out of your minds if you want to get rid of home rule. By the way, what that means is the state passes the laws for your town, and you're beholden to whatever the state of Illinois says. Ask Rockford. Rockford is the one home rule city that went back away from home rule, and it's a disaster. I mean, if you want to go that route, that's nuts. You want to be in control of your own destiny because your local government knows what you need. The state is not going to take care of us, you know that. So, and there's a lot of small towns that would like to become home rule, because they can't get, the state has cut back our revenues by 40%. Orland can absorb it, and if we have to, if the state cuts back all of it, I mean, we at least have the ability to go get revenue somehow. But say a town like Palos Park can't. So if the state cuts back their revenue by 40%, now granted it's a lot smaller than what we would get, but they don't have an ability to go fill that bucket in any way on their own because of the home rule sales tax. But auto is exempted from that. So our home rule sales tax does not apply to titled goods. So their service department is taxed, their parts would be taxed, but their autos, their actual titled goods are not. So large goods basically are not. So we don't have the ability to do that. We do their parts and stuff like that, but that's the same tax as you get for clothing and for all of that. What we also have done with our auto dealers, which is kind of a standard practice since before I was here, is auto dealers periodically update their capital and their locations. Their dealers require it, that type of thing. So we typically have done fairly standardly a tax sharing program with them because we want to keep our auto revenue is very high, and we have the third best auto row in the state. If you fold in Orland Hills and Tinley dealers, it's the number one in the state. So it's a very robust area for auto. We do a tax sharing with them for any new additions they do. But what we do is we set the baseline at, here's how much you've sold. Anything you sell more based on this new addition, we'll split the sales tax 50-50 with you to help offset your costs. So we're still getting something, they're getting something, but it helps them offset some of their costs to keep their dealerships looking nice and not deteriorating like you've seen happen in other towns. So we do that. But it's based off their current baseline. So it's not like you get to start from zero. So if you're selling $5 million worth of cars now, anything you sell above $5 million is what you get to split on. That other $5 million, because your addition is not helping you with that. You already had that as a baseline. So.
How often do you have these meetings?
Every month or so.
Oh, I'm
Sometimes
new to
every
the
couple.
area, newer to the
Yeah.
area.
What's the other two pictures?
What other two pictures? This one, well, this one's the play set at Michael Schofield. This is the All Abilities. Kind of shows you an All Abilities. So it's got the soft mat down below. What other picture are you talking about?
The scoreboard.
Yeah, that's as I mentioned before, that's a mock scoreboard at the sports complex. It's just a mock-up of what it might look like. So, any other questions?
You're talking about road construction, and they're working, last one, you said they were working on Clearview. Oh, they did the west side of Clearview, and they haven't finished it yet. But are they gonna do the east side? That's where I was.
Okay, so some of the subdivisions we have are very large, and they break them up into pieces, and they don't do them all in 1 year. So I don't know off the top of my head what's being done this year, but we have like 20 different road areas that are being done this year. So typically, if one area gets done this year and not all of it, then the next year typically it's being done. So, but again, it all depends on we have 240 road areas that and they've all been measured, they've all been evaluated, and based on their current condition, that's basically what we use to determine what's next. There's some variability to that because there may be a construction project like Wheeler that we know about. So we don't do that until that construction project's done, so some stuff gets pushed off. There's also sometimes where you have two road areas that are really bad, and in between there's one that, maybe would wait 4 or 5 years, but it's right in between them and it's small. You might as well just do them all at once, so we do that. So there is a little bit of variance to that, but for the most part, it's whatever's in the worst shape gets the attention first. So.
You typically post if a road's gonna have construction, a sign ahead of time to let people?
So we have an entire process for putting signs up, for notifying homeowners, all of that stuff. Our contractors have a responsibility to do that, and my understanding, Lindahl, this is the first time we've used them. My understanding is they've been fantastic. They've been the best since I've been mayor, so they've been great at that. And I think we're doing, I can't remember, we added 4 or 5 more, but the amount of road areas we've done, I mean, we've basically, like I said, went from 40% poor in 2019 to 17% this year, projected to be under close to 5, under 10, close to 5 at the end of the next 4 years. And basically that's like best in class. I mean, you can't really do much better than that. So, but we also have to balance some of the bigger projects we have too, because you have Fairway, you have Orland Hills subdivision, which, by the way, it was Orland Hills subdivision before Orland Hills. Orland Hills was called West Haven back then and changed their name. And then you have Laguna Woods. So kind of a couple of those your neck of the woods, right? Laguna Woods and Orland Hills.
When you say Orland Hills, are you doing?
I mean the subdivision,
the
yeah.
original Orland Hills?
Yeah, the original, the subdivision.
Off 135th Street?
Yes,
yeah? Okay.
yes. So those were areas that were, I believe, all those areas were not initially incorporated, and they were incorporated by the village at some point, but they were built to the county standards, so they don't have the sidewalks we have, they don't have some of the infrastructure that the rest of the Orland that's built up since has. And so those roads, to get to today's current road standard, require a lot more construction. It's not just doing a 2-inch asphalt mill on those. They have to be completely reconstructed because they were built 50 plus years ago, and they just don't meet today's standards. So Fairway was a 10-year project. I think we've cut it down to 6 because I said this is just way too long, so we pushed it forward to get these done. Then this year we're doing Laguna Woods. Next year we're doing Orland Hills, I believe. So, and what that involves, it involves rebuilding the roads. It puts curbs along the roads as well, and then redoing and reshaping all the ditches, which we have gotten a couple complaints over the last 6-7 years on that, because the ditches now get deeper, and because they've gotten filled with sediment and all that stuff over time, so the water doesn't move the way it needs to move. So all that stuff is being redone, but those are pretty major relative to the other subdivisions. Most of those are fixing curbs and then putting a 2-inch, grinding off 2 inches of asphalt and putting 2 inches of asphalt in most of those. But there are a few that do need reconstruction because they're older.
Exactly what was wrong with the cultural center, and is it really advisable to demolish it?
$6.2 million to repair it.
Okay, where?
There were HVAC, duct work. I mean, I don't have the list, but it was $6.2 million. They went through every building. What's that? Windows, roof. I mean, there was just, again, it was $6.2 million. We don't use it. We don't use it for that many events that we can't fill somewhere else. So spending $6.2 million on that building doesn't make sense. And just like the Davidson Center, which was next to it, we demolished that. I was here when the Davidson Center was built. I was here when the library, the then Aileen S. Andrew Library, before it was the Cultural Center, was built. I was here for all that. The buildings are just beyond their useful life, and the Cultural Center was built as a library the way libraries were built back then. It's not really functional for the events we need. We've made it work because we had some space. We've made it work, but we just don't have enough use for it to make sense spending $6 million in operating another building. So if you do $6 million on that, it's $6 million you can't do roads, or $6 million you can't do water and sewer. So you have to make a decision somewhere.
What do you do with the new homeowners that are not taking care of their property?
So we have a.
Is there a policy?
Yeah, we do have a policy. We have an inspection. We have inspectors. We have people that come look at. So if you have a neighbor that's not maintaining their yard, you can file a complaint. We'll send our property inspectors out there. If they're not meeting the standards of the village, they'll talk to them. Usually they'll talk to them and say, hey, here's the standards. Here's what you have to do it to, and they'll just kind of talk to them. And then if that doesn't work, then we can write tickets. We can write warning tickets. We can write tickets. We can fine them. We can even so much as lien properties and stuff like that if they don't maintain their property. So we can go down all that path. But we don't go around and check 22,000 homes and say, oh, you're in compliance and not in compliance. One, we don't have the staff to do that. So we basically respond to complaints is what we do and go out and take a look. Sometimes we see them driving around, but not too often. So, and probably the next one will probably be back at the Village Hall. And the nice thing about that is we do have the electronic ability to show you like which road which roads are being fixed this year. But that is also on the website. I can tell you that there's the road improvement program, which areas are being fixed this year are on that. All this park information is on there. Which parks are being fixed? We've got a lot of parks being fixed too. When I arrived here, we had one park every 2 years was getting fixed. We have 66 parks. That's 132 years to get through all of our parks. That didn't make a whole lot of sense, so we changed the way we did things. We evaluated all our parks. Everything in poor condition in all of our parks were addressed over the next 4 years, and now we're in the process of doing that again. So all this is about having the information, having the data. The roads were reassessed. They'll be reassessed in 4 more years, and again, we'll look at it from there. But the idea here is to get all of these things into a steady state, so we're not playing catch up on all the stuff that was neglected for 20 years.
When you say the parks were assessed, was that done by village personnel or an outside agency?
An outside agency.
At what cost?
I don't remember, but our personnel don't have the broad skill set to assess safety. I mean, we have safety personnel, but they can't address safety, equipment, all of that. Plus, if we did that, then they can't fix or inspect the parks for just their regular job. So we hire outside consultants to come look at that. Just like our roads, they drive every single road. They have a scanner that scans every single road. That's what they do. And that allows us to be much more efficient with how we spend our money, where we spend our money.
What's going on with Tex-Mex Chewy, that place, they closed down?
Chewy's closed down as far as, yeah. So that's
No
all I
plans for
know.
that building is privately owned, so it's.
Well, again, the village doesn't own, we're not in the building, and we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be in the owning property, building businesses stuff, so that's theirs. That's how we actually got, the 143rd and LaGrange, probably before you lived here, way before I was mayor. We've lost $30 million there because the previous mayor decided to play developer there and buy out businesses and buy land, and we're still stuck with this. We still have this area. Well, the University of Chicago is great to be in Orland Park. However, we gave them, before me, a very sweetheart deal and we took them away. They were looking at 2 private pieces of land, and we put a non-for-profit business in a TIF. And I know that most of you probably don't know what a TIF is, but a TIF is a tax incentive financing district, and what it does is it freezes tax. It doesn't eliminate taxes for the school board like they will tell you that it does. It doesn't eliminate it. It freezes it at the level it was when the TIF was established for redevelopment. As it gets redeveloped and a new building goes in and it's worth more, that property tax on that building's higher, the difference goes into the project, and it has to be spent on certain things. So it's spent on infrastructure, water, basically public goods, a park, so it can be spent on things for the public, right? That's how a lot of things are. I mean, that's, Arlington Heights, if the Bear Stadium goes there, they'll use that. We'll use it again for this new development there, right? To help offset the cost of the new park and those types of things. So we would use it at the Andrew property to help for cleanup. So it's a tool that we have available to us to use. Well, the last thing you would ever do in a TIF is put a business that pays no property tax, because not only are you not getting the old property tax, you're not getting any of the new property tax. So we put a non-for-profit, which may be the dumbest thing I've ever seen, into a TIF. But it was because this is what happens when government owns something. Government spends a lot of money on something, then the people that are there feel like, oh, we got to put something there because we don't have anything there. And that's how we got that. That's how we got a 296-unit apartment building that we put $64 million in. The developer put $1 million in. Those are things we shouldn't do with public money, right? I don't like it either. So we're trying to avoid doing that as much as possible. Now, that new area there, that area that we're trying to redevelop, we'll redo the TIF there to help offset the costs of the park and a couple other things to try and get it developed and try to make it so the developer can make the numbers work. Because especially in today's environment, it's very hard for them with the interest rates being up as much as they are to make the numbers work. But it's, so that's a tool we have. Like I said, Andrew property is a good example of that. There's like $9 million, my estimate, $9 or $10 million of additional cleanup that's needed. whatever goes in there, there's likely to be a TIF, and we'll use that TIF increment to help offset the cost of that cleanup for the developer. Because it's in our interest, it's in the public's interest to get that property cleaned up.
I know you've in the past spoken to the Safety Act. Are there any new updates on that are worth mentioning?
Well, it's in place. I'm not, well, it's going to go in place. I'm not sure what all the impacts are going to be. It's not going to be good. They did some of the stuff in, so back last October, November, when you may recall there were TV ads saying, you know, that I was lying and others were lying about the Safety Act. Well, interestingly enough, right after the election, all those things that we pointed out that were wrong, they tried to clean some of those up, or most of them. And they did clean them up. It made it better. It's still bad. It's way too all-encompassing. It covers, and this is what, and I think it still might end up losing in the U.S. Supreme Court, because a law in Illinois is only supposed to any laws are supposed to be single topic, and this thing was all over the place. It was cash bail. It was police reform. There was a lot of things in here. But it's not going to be good. We've been dealing with a lot of this stuff already, but it's going to be bad from a trespassing perspective. We can now, however, at least get someone off the property, but there's still a lot of open issues. Like, okay, if we remove someone from the property, and let's say we bring them to the jail, bring them to our jail, and we house them for a couple hours, and then the judge says, well, no bail. Well, now are they going to sue us because we held them for 2 hours? Right, so there's all kinds of potential issues. There's also a lot of issues that don't protect police officers for their actions. So judges, if judges release someone and that person goes on to commit a crime, judges have immunity from that decision. They can't be sued by the families and all that. Police officers don't. So police officers are now, you know, they may be being told that, hey, these are people we can't hold, but then they don't hold them, and then they commit, well, it doesn't matter. They're not immune from that decision, even though they're being told this is a decision they have to make. So there's a lot of things here that have to be worked out, and it's not going to be pretty. And I also don't think it's going to, on the whole, I don't think it's going to accomplish what those people who are pushing for this think it's going to accomplish, because here's what this does for a judge. Okay, there's no cash bail. It gives them a binary choice for certain acts. Okay. There's still certain acts, like there's still a lot of violent acts that they can't even hold them at all. But let's just talk about the ones they can, that they have an option to hold someone or not hold someone. So, murder. Okay. The judges currently, they can hold someone with no bond. They can let them go on their own recognizance. They can also put monetary requirements on them if they want. Basically, the whole idea is to do something that makes them show up to court, or if they're a danger to society, remove them from society, right? So they have a range of choices to make based on the circumstances. Now they have 2 choices to make. Let them go or hold them. Now in Cook County, they've been erring for years on the side of letting them go and letting everyone go, and so they're going to just let more people go. Okay? They're not going to hold them. So maybe that accomplishes the goal of the people who want this. But let's talk about the 98 of the other counties where you have judges that are more likely to impose stiff bonds and say, hey, you need it's a $10,000 bond. Let's just take DuPage or Will County, for example. Okay? Well, now that judge's choice is let them go or hold them, and they look at it and go, man, I don't want to let this guy go with no guarantee he's going to come back. Well, then I'm just going to hold him. That's my option, right? So it's going to backfire in a lot of places. A lot of people are going to be being held that maybe wouldn't have been held before and could have gotten out on a bond, right? So it's I don't think it's going to be this panacea that people think it's that some people think it's going to be. Who have a different view than me on the issue. I don't think it's going to work exactly the way they want it to work, because most counties in Illinois are not Cook County. There's 2 counties that are kind of like Cook County in that regard, and that's Cook and Lake right now. All the rest are going to lean towards keeping everyone in jail. And so now these people are going to be held in perpetuity. The other problem with this is that all these people that are mandated to be released, so DuPage is a really good example of this. The DuPage County Sheriff, the county sheriff's responsible for the county jail, okay? County jails are where people are held when they're on bond. They don't go to prison, you know, right? They're not at Stateville, they're at county jails, is where they're held when they haven't produced bond. Well, the county jails are the ones that have the programs. So DuPage has an outstanding program that I believe, the last I heard, it was a 20% recidivism rate. And the first thing they do is they have 30 days to clean them, because most of the people there are coming in, they're on drugs. And so they spend 30 days getting them clean. And then they have focused job skill programs. So one of those programs, like for example, welding is an area that they're really short welders. So they try and marry the programs with where there's a lot of job opportunity. And they've only had a 20% recidivism rate. Well, now none of these people are going to be held on bond. So they're never going to get cleaned up. They're going to go right back out. And so in that, there's a place that was doing something well, right? That was helping these people get their lives back in order while they were in the county jail. I'm not saying that happens in the Cook County Jail. It doesn't. Okay, but in DuPage, that's been happening. Well, why don't we model that and put that somewhere else to help get these people the help they need and get out of that cycle of crime and drugs and crime, because that's what it is in most cases. It's a cycle of drugs and crime and drugs and crime and drugs and crime, and that's what it is. So it's a complicated issue. It's a complicated issue that we threw a massive bill with no time to read it at everybody, and there's a lot, and there's some good things in it. In a bill that size, there's a lot of bad things in it. And we're much better off to take it in bite-sized pieces, but I don't think we really know what the ramifications are until it goes into place. Then we'll really know. We're preparing for it, training for it, and we got to try and understand it. I think the attorneys the state's attorneys have to try and understand it. The judges have to understand it, because no one understands it.
Regardless of how people feel, the reality of fentanyl use is increasing everywhere. It's undeniable. Is the village in any position, or have they taken steps, at least for our public programs, sportsplex, any of the library, any and all, to training staff for Narcan use and provide?
So as far as Narcan use goes, obviously it's there's only certain people that are allowed to use it and be trained and administered, but the people that are. So, and we have used it successfully a few times, not recently, but we have used it successfully a few times. And it's not just an issue of people we run into that may have overdosed on it, and the Narcan saves them. It's also an issue of exposure to our police officers. That's a big concern, because obviously that becomes an issue as well. So the fire district, while they don't report under me, I'm well aware that they have training on it. They carry it. All of our police officers have it. So yeah, we.
I'm expressing a personal opinion. Other areas aside from Cook County have taken steps to address this head-on, and are providing it in the schools, are providing it in public spaces, and in many cases, funding for it through different programs, including the county.
So the schools and stuff, again, that's not something we control. I don't know what their capabilities are. I do know we have an officer there, well, at the high school level, we have an officer there all the time, and he has that capability. So, but I don't know what the school's capability is. I can tell you that we, Orland Park, we aren't seeing that issue. We aren't seeing an issue in the schools. Cannabis continues to be an issue in the schools. But beyond that, we haven't seen a harder drug issue in the schools. We see that issue after they get out of high school. So when they're 19, 20 is when we start to see that issue, not so much in the schools. So it's something, that's the nice thing about having resource officers, is it really helps us address those things, and we can see when kids are having problems and difficulties and that kind of stuff.
That is it. As you have just pointed out, when they launch into early adulthood or at any age, I think it's an important feature, just like once upon a time there weren't AEDs, that we perhaps at another
Yeah,
level look at that?
We have them. So the village is the village, you know, is aware and has those things in place. I can't speak to, you know, the library or the school district or any of those others because I just you know, frankly don't know what their you know, what their training level is, and I'm not sure based on Illinois laws what they're allowed to do. I have enough trouble keeping up with Illinois laws related to our employees, let alone, you know, teachers and all of that. So, but it is a problem. It's a problem that, you know, frankly, both of our congressmen have voted every single time to allow fentanyl to come across the borders and not toughen the laws. So that much I can tell you, which I think is absurd. It's crazy. I don't care which side of the political aisle on. You're out of your mind if you're allowing, you know, you're not toughening the penalties of people bringing fentanyl across our southern border. But that's my personal opinion. I think that's probably the opinion of most people in the room, but
I know you can't do anything about it, but down in Louisiana with a redistricting policy that they said is the policies that the people with redistricting made up their districts so it's more likely to get, well, more likely to get Democrats, because we all know it, into office than Republicans, like having a strip from city of Chicago down to Kankakee as a district.
we have 5 state reps and 4 state senators, so that our vote doesn't count, okay, and our vote doesn't matter, so that we can't actually have someone that represents our values. I'm telling you, I can tell you with certainty that Bobby Rush never came to Orland Park in my time as a mayor. Okay, he was a congressman, right? And I can tell you with certainty that the needs of the majority of his district and the needs of Orland Park are not the same, right? So I believe that districts should be contiguous and be as compact as possible. That's what you would like. To your point of the gerrymandering, it happens in Illinois, but it also happens in Republican-dominated states too. They do the same thing. So it's a problem not just here, it's a problem everywhere. And we get better government at a state level and at a U.S. level if we have contested elections where people actually have a chance. You look at even the state of Illinois, 17 congressional districts, the 3 Republican districts are plus 30 Republican. So they will always be Republican. So basically it almost guarantees a job for life, right? The 14 Democrat, it's the same thing. Now a couple of those are closer, right? Like the 6th here is a little closer, but there's like 2 or 3, but many of those are uncontested as well. And the state is not 80% Democrat, but the representation is 80%, and that won't shift, right? Because we don't have contested, right? But other states can say the same thing. Other states are not 80% Republican, but yet they're always going to be represented 80% Republican because of the gerrymandering that goes on. So this happen. It's a national problem, and the fair maps would have been a much better way to get maps and get better representation. And we think it's bad at Congress. It really hurts us in the state Senate and state House because they have majorities. Super majorities the Democrats have, and I've had Democratic lawmakers because I'm like, this stuff you're doing is asinine. They agree. They're like, well, we need more Republicans down here. It's like, well, you gerrymandered it, so you can't have that, because the problem is their own party, if they fall out of line, will fund someone to knock them out of office. It's just the way unfortunately, it's the way it works. And the best thing that we could do is to have fair maps with contested elections that were closer, and you would get better representation. That's my personal opinion. And people would be there for less time. And you know, we put term limits here in Orland Park. I think term limits are a good thing too. So.
Well, didn't the national government or the Supreme Court say they were gerrymandering some districts in Louisiana?
They did that, and then you have but then you have other things where judges flip hands. You had that in Wisconsin. Now they're probably going to, because the court has switched control, now they're probably going to declare the maps unconstitutional there because it's flip control. I mean, unfortunately, that's politics. But that's why the best government you get is at the local level. That's why I think at the local level, we want what we have, which is, like, for example, Elmhurst has an aldermanic form of government. They have 14 different aldermen. They all represent 1/14 of the town. So they're responsible for this little portion of town. They're responsible for this. So they just go around to that little portion of town, right? But what does that breed? It breeds 14 people trying to get their roads done and not these roads done. Here, we elect us at large. So all the trustees represent the whole village. And so we look at the village as a whole. When we redo roads, we look at what's the condition of the road, and we deal with whatever's the worst condition. When we redo parks, we look at which parks need the work the most, which park areas need the work the most, so we focus on those. We don't focus on, we're putting stuff in, I'm fighting for my subdivision, I'm fighting for my subdivision. So I think that's a much better way to go, and I think it gets us better government. And the best government you get, even if you don't agree with it all the time, the best government you get is still local, because they know exactly what your needs are. The state reps don't really care about Orland Park. There's 5 of them. I mean, there's a couple of them I can call and they will help me, right? But at the end of the day, the vote is so parsed. We've been so cut up. Instead of a town of 60, we're the 21st biggest town in Illinois. We've now been reduced to not really mattering because they've just split us up so much. So.
Well, that's like LA County. It has 6 people running the whole county.
Right. That's probably too small for a county that size, right? A good example is they expanded. So Fran Hurley's district covered about half of Orland Park before, and she also covered the city of Chicago and all that. Now that wasn't but she covered the southwest portion of the city of Chicago. Okay, so at least it's a little bit more aligned. It's still not great, but they've changed that. I think 60% of the town now is covered by Justin Slaughter. Justin Slaughter is the person who was the founder and sponsor and drafter of the Safety Act. Okay, that does not represent the people of Orland Park at all. But if you look at the rest of his district, a lot of that district it does. But they put so much of Orland, but the part of Orland Park is not enough to matter in his election, even though it's 60% of Orland Park. So basically, we have a representative that does not care about our issues, and that's a fact. He doesn't, it's not like he's out here. It's not like he returns calls. It's not like we can, lean on him for anything. The ones we have that actually help us. Actually, one that's very helpful to me isn't even one of our reps. He's just a good guy, and he's a neighboring rep 10, 15 miles away, and he's pushed some issues for local government that are important to Orland and other towns. So, any other questions? We got another 20 minutes of questions out of that after you didn't have questions.
That parcel of land you were talking about, the electric, the abandoned electric.
Andrew, yeah?
Andrews, yeah. Slipped my mind. Is there toxic in there? Is that why?
It's been cleaned up. It's been cleaned up to a commercial standard, but not to a residential standard. If someone wants to put residential in there, they have to clean it up further.
That's why it's going to cost so much.
Yes. The latest proposal I saw was a residential proposal, which would require that cleanup.
Why would you accept John Humphrey's house when you know that it needs a lot to be done? Why not and you keep on demolishing buildings, why would you accept it?
Well, first off, the John Humphrey house is on the National Historic Landmark Registry. So it's one of what I think 2 buildings in town that's on that, and the other one is the Twin Towers? Yes. Yeah, so we have 2. So it's a National Historic Landmark, so we can't just let it go. And it was donated to us by John Humphrey himself. Yeah, so as part of his will. So that's why we would accept it. And it is not $6.2 million to do. And it's a National Historic Landmark. This is not, the Cultural Center is not, Davidson Building is not, the museum is not. John Humphrey House is. And the cost of John Humphrey House to redo that is less than any of these other buildings to restore them. buildings that don't last forever. And those are the people who were at the last, at the meeting here for the Veterans Center. I get it. People don't like change. Okay, but I was in the military, and so this was more directed to the VFW and the Legion. I was in the military. My first base, Medina Annex at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, was closed and moved before I even got out of the Air Force. And I was only in the Air Force for 9 years. My next base was Mather Air Force Base in Sacramento, California, where I went to NAV training. It was closed and moved 4 years later. My next base, or one of my next two bases, was water survival training at Homestead Air Force Base, Florida. Also closed and moved by the next 5 years I was in the military. My first 4 flying squadrons have all been closed, and they all had a long history dating back to the Army Air Corps. Things change, and things get modified. At a base I was at, I was a lieutenant. I was responsible for basically rebuilding. People who know fighter squadrons, we have squadron bars, right? That people hang out in. We rebuilt. We took a big storage area and made it this great place for us to hang out, have a good time. And I went back 10 years later, and they'd turned it into offices, and they'd moved the bar into a tiny little office. Things change. I mean, I didn't like it. We spent a lot of time, money, got a lot of money donated, a lot of volunteer time to make it happen, but things change. And this is no different, but it's pretty straightforward. Those buildings we talked about, $6.2 million for that, $1 million for the museum building, this building at $400,000, the Davidson Center, and then all of the other outbuildings that we're looking to get rid of. All told, it's $14 million of repairs we would need for buildings we don't need. Or we can spend that $14 million on buildings we do need, and/or roads, and/or parks that we have. So it's all about priorities, and our priorities is to be as efficient as we can. The other thing about these buildings you don't take into account, the cultural center here, we have to have janitorial service. We have to have, we have to pick up garbage. We have to pay for electric. We have to pay for phone service. We have to pay for all of that stuff that you have to pay for. That the security alarm that you've got right there, that's right there. So I believe is that security alarm there, or is that, yeah, security alarm. So we have all of that we have. The HVAC systems for these big buildings are very, very expensive. So that's our option. Here, another good example is that a different decision may have been made with this board, but we're at where we're at. Orland Health and Fitness. We made a decision as a board, before me, so the board before us made a decision to accept that building in exchange for land. Now that's a discussion that's worth having, but here's the problem. They did no due diligence on that. They just took it. Here's how much money we've had to spend on that building, and that has an indoor pool. We've had to spend $6.5 million so far, and $6.5 million more, $13 million. Now, 4,000 people a week go to that building. Okay, it got us an indoor pool. Now, you may have decided, if you have that discussion, that $13 million is cheaper than building an indoor pool. We want an indoor pool, so it's worth doing. You should have known that, though, before you made that trade, and known what your costs were going to be. And basically the decision was made is, I don't know, but I'm just going to take it and we'll deal with it. That goes back to your question about consultants. That's why we evaluate our parks. That's why we evaluate our roads. And why we evaluated every single building, so we know what our costs are, so we can make good decisions. They made a decision, may have been a good one, may have been a bad one. The fact is, it was an uninformed one, which is bad. It's bad policy to make uninformed decisions, right? Now we have it, so we have what we have. But the point is we want to make good, informed decisions, and I think that $14 million, I think the board agrees, and staff agreed, is money better spent on other buildings, and on other projects, and on our parks, and on our roads, because that's what matters the most. And again, I'm a Legion member. This building's a perfect example. I'm a Legion member and a VFW member. This building is beyond its useful life. It just is. And the new building will actually accommodate us better for the long run, and it's not going to need anything major for 20 years. So it just makes, and it's becoming vacant because we're moving the people that are in there into the open space at the rec admin building. Again, trying to consolidate and not have all of this empty space. It's just good government.
When you call not, oh, go ahead.
I would like to know the answer to this. I know generally speaking, everywhere it's difficult to acquisition new talent into police and fire, and knowing the community, of course, wants a safe community. I was a bit surprised that Pritzker signed this bill about illegal immigrants being able to be attracted now and hired into police and public service roles for safety, as long as they have a work permit. I understand that, and this leads into my question. Locally here, are budgeted positions filled? I know that there have been retirements, et cetera, but are we pretty much up to date with filling our budgeted positions?
We are pretty much up to date with filling our budgeted police positions. All of our budgeted, I mean, we're not unlike every other organization having a challenge finding talent, finding people. I mean, the market is shrinking, it's just a smaller pool of people. So we have trouble filling certain positions. And we've made some decisions too, like there are some things that I think long-term makes sense for us to outsource. But the outsourcing companies can't find people. So for right now, we can't outsource them because we're better off having someone in-source that's staying here than having them not being able to fulfill their need. In a different marketplace, they can fulfill the need faster than we can, and it kind of makes sense, but now it doesn't. So there's some decisions we're making because of that. Regarding the police thing, so first off, as much as I love to hear the governor be pounded for illegal immigrants, it's not illegal immigrants, it's people with work permits, so they're not here illegally. But they are not citizens. I think it's a horrible idea to have non-citizens policing citizens. Horrible idea. Now, someone would make the argument, well, the military allows people to fast track to citizenship if they have a work visa and they join the military. Like, well, that's a little bit different. And then the question is, well, how's it different? Here's how it's different. The military has posse comitatus. We cannot be involved in any action against a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil. So we can't do that as a military. So we are simply fighting foreign governments, not U.S. citizens. So I think that makes it very different than policing a non-citizen policing a citizen. Here in Orland, we are not going to do that. I can tell you that right now. I haven't talked to my board, but I'm pretty sure I have 100% of alignment of my board, of the chief, of staff, that we are absolutely not going to do that. It is a horrible, horrible, horrible idea. Here's the problem. You had to pass that because you've made it so miserable to be a police officer because you've been attacking them for your entire tenure as governor, including the Safety Act. How about that? And if you go back to the original Safety Act, it was actually written to go after police officers. And anyone who wants to argue that point, I'll just make one clear point that makes it very clear that this is how it was developed. Because when it was first written, here's what it was: that a police officer, so they have to wear body cameras. By the way, it's very expensive and it's an unfunded mandate. The village already is paying for that because we think it's good because it exonerates police officers over 99% of the time and it gives us much better information. However, a lot of towns can't afford it, okay? But, so they were mandated to wear body cameras, but they were not allowed to access their body camera footage to write the reports for their arrests and their incidents. So they're not allowed to review the footage available to them. And if their account written was different than was on the body camera, they could be impeached and charged. So you're telling them they have a tool they can look at to write it correctly. Instead, you're telling them they must go from memory, and if their memory is different than the video, we can charge you with something and wreck your career. Tell me that was not written specifically to drive police officers out of policing. That's exactly what Governor Pritzker has done since he's been in office, and now they passed this. How about, we have a phenomenal police department, phenomenal. We do things right. We do things by the book. I think that every other police department should follow our lead. Most of the stuff that was in the Safety Act, almost all of it, that are good policing practices, and there are some stuff in there that's good policing. We already do this stuff, okay? So there's a lot of things that we already do and should be done everywhere, right? That's fine. But when you're going after their livelihoods, when you're trying to say, and their original bill also got rid of qualified immunity. Does anybody know what qualified immunity is? It means that when you're on the job, anything that you do on the job, you can't be sued personally for what you do on the job, okay? If a police officer doesn't have that, no one in their right mind would be a police officer. For stopping you for a traffic ticket, you could sue them personally and individually, and they would have to go hire their own attorney. I mean, no one could be a police officer. I even heard Lori Lightfoot go, "Are you out of your mind on this?" I heard her say that because she's a mayor. She knows you couldn't possibly ever get another police officer to become one ever again. Even the best of them that love it, they would all quit. They just can't put their whole family's fortune on the line for writing a traffic ticket. And it's just nuts. And the proponents that said this needs to get removed will say, well, otherwise they can't be held accountable. That is not true. If they violate the law, they can be sued civilly. They can't be sued civilly for doing their job. But if they violate the law, they can, even under qualified immunity. So my point is that's what they've gone after. So, and it's unfortunate. It makes it harder it's harder for us to get police officers, but we have a full police department. And we've had a lot of retirements. We've had a lot of things we've had to replace. We've got a younger force, but fortunately, and we're going to have some more, but I think generally speaking, we've got a much younger force than what we had when I first arrived. That's true of the whole village, actually. I think we got a much younger workforce than we had. So when we had the early retirement program, 180 people that were in positions that were eligible, 95 of them took the early retirement. So that tells you how many people were long in the tooth here. We had a lot of people that were, very long in the tooth. So.
Do you know if the head of security for the mall and the larger shopping areas, Orland Park Place and so forth, do they have an actual law enforcement background, or is it more just rent-a-cop type thing?
So the mall, they have law enforcement backgrounds, and and then I can't speak to everyone who they hire, but the mall for sure has someone with a law enforcement background, and they have someone at their corporate level that has a long and deep law enforcement background as well. And they do a really good job. They've been doing a really good job over there. So, and they're very good working with us.
In defense of Sportsplex, they have a great staff. Deborah and Kurt do a great job, and I couldn't think of a better staff working under me. We've never seen a problem there.
I go every day.
Yeah, we're there quite a bit.
Yeah,
We've been there since they opened.
Yeah. No, we have great staff. I'm not saying things don't happen from time to time, but
Quick question about the Schofield Sports Complex. Is there gonna be an AED there? Do they have one in Centennial Park West?
There won't be AEDs at any outdoor facilities. There's not going to be AEDs, but we have AEDs though. Say I'm pretty sure Centennial Park where we have the 5 ball fields. There's an AED inside of our buildings. Yeah. So anything that we control, where we can have access to it, there'll be nothing that the public can access. But our facilities, Sportsplex, Orland Health and Fitness, our buildings, they have AEDs, and we have people that are, and they're trained to use them. We won't have them at the football facility here. That's up to the football program to have medical staff there, because we don't have any ability to control it or keep it, keep it safe, I guess, is the point. So,
There's even one in this building.
yeah. So, but most of our village buildings have them. Those that we can secure. So I would imagine Centennial Park West, the dressing room area, and that will probably have one that we'll have access to. But remember, whenever we have a concert, if you've been to the Taste of Orland, there's I think the the fire district football team is there. I mean, they've got that many people. So they were all sitting out on lawn chairs yesterday, the fire district people. So.
Congratulations on the public image for our ambassador dog, Leo. He has, he's been in the media, he's been on TV. I think it's a real plus for, just every pet lover, but it's really a good thing to see, and it's even better for the people that.
Well, it's all about Leo, because Leo's just such a great dog. And so is Maverick, by the way, our police dog, not the comfort dog, but our working dog. Maverick is just as friendly as Leo. I mean, Maverick is a great dog as well. So yeah, both of our dogs are fantastic. If you like dogs, even if you don't like dogs, it's hard not to like them. So yeah, they're great. So, and I can't say enough about Rich Miller, who handles Leo, because he also does our evidence lockup. He's also responsible for our emergency services disaster agency. And a lot of these things he does with Leo, he does on his own time. So he goes and visits these families. The family of the slain officer in Chicago actually asked him to come be with them at the funeral, and he did that. And he does, like I said, a lot of this on his own time, and that takes a toll on somebody that's handling that dog and dealing with all that emotional support, because they're there, the dog's there, the dog is the dog, right? He doesn't really understand, but Rich sees it all, and so he's a very, very good man and awesome with the dog.
I believe they said that the donation that was received, the award donation for the dog, was going to be contributed to that officer's grave.
Yeah. So so like I said, he does fantastic things, and that's him on his own doing that. That's not us mandating him go to these things. He does that on his own time. So, but any other? That's it. So we got. All right, good, because I do have to go. It's 11 o'clock. Thank you all for coming.